Everyone, welcome to this evening's devotion. Tonight we look at Matthew chapter 7 verse 13 and 14, and it says this: "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." What Jesus is saying here is he has gone in to draw the conclusion to the Sermon on the Mount by using four illustrations. Apologies, yesterday I said it was two illustrations. Four illustrations, and the four illustrations, simply put, are two comparisons in each illustration. In this illustration we have two paths. In the next illustration we see two trees. In the next illustration we see two claims, and in the final illustration we see two houses. And Jesus juxtaposes these two things against one another in the illustration. And in this illustration he says that there are only two ways to live, two paths. One leads to life, which equals salvation, and the other leads to destruction, which is another way of speaking of the eternal separation from God, and that is hell. A great illustration of these two paths is seen through the really well-known work, John Bunyan's Pilgrim Progress, where the main character, Christian, is on this hard journey, and as he goes towards his goal, and he sees that, and he is faced with the wide path that is easy to go along, but it does lead to destruction. If you haven't read that book, I just highly recommend you to read that well-known work. And so what I want to put forward to you today is 3 points that we see from this passage. The first one is this: being a Christian, being a disciple, a follower of Jesus Christ is not easy. Jesus says it right here: "For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." Holiness is hard. Obedience is hard. Poverty of spirit and recognizing our great need for Christ is hard. And we are to recognize that this is not something that comes easily. And because it is hard to follow after the Lord in obedience, many will reject it. For we live in a world that strives to find the easiest road. They strive for self-indulgence rather than holy obedience. And I would want to encourage you today, in your pursuit of holiness, in your pursuit of living this righteous Christian life that the Lord has called us to, do not lose heart when obedience is hard. Do not lose heart when the pursuit of holiness is hard. But hold fast, for the reward is coming. And great is the reward that is coming as we would hold fast to the narrow road. Number 2, the majority doesn't mean that it is right. We read in Luke chapter 13, verse 22 to 23, the disciples come to Jesus and they ask him this question. They say, "He went on his way through towns and villages, teaching and journeying towards Jerusalem. And someone said to him, 'Lord, will those who are saved be few?' And he said to them," and then he goes and he says these great words in verse 24, "Strive to enter through the narrow door, for many, I tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able to." And then he carries on to speak of an illustration that would link to the third illustration of the two different claims, speaking of, but we did all these things with you, we knew you. And at the end the Lord would say to them, "Away with me, away from me, you evildoers, I never knew you." The majority of people in this world, unfortunately, although some of them would claim to follow Christ, unfortunately, we would know that they do not. We live in a world where obedience is often seen by popular opinion. And just because the majority of the world would say that something is right, it doesn't mean that it is right. And so for us as Christians, we aren't to follow the easy, popular route, but we are to follow what the scriptures would say. And this is why it is so important for us to have a biblical thinking, to have a Bible-based theology that would be leading our living. And so I encourage you, when you may face the persecution from the world, for you to not follow the popular opinion, but you would follow the teachings of the Lord. Hold fast to this verse. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, but it leads to life and it doesn't lead to destruction. Hold fast, Christian. Number 3 flows from this. These roads have eternal significance. We are not speaking of earthly rewards or temporal gains, but we are speaking for all time and eternity. The popularity of the road does not equal salvation for eternity. The biblical nature of the road would be that. So I would encourage you. I don't know the trial that you are facing. I don't know the temptations that you are facing. But I would say this: walk the narrow road. Walk the road of obedience. Pursue the road of obedience rather than pursuing the worldly, popular, easy road. For they have eternal significance. May the Lord train us in this. May the Lord teach us the significance of this today. In His name, Amen.